Long before kingdoms rose and fell, before ink touched papyrus, before men built altars to gods they barely understood, there were those who could see, not with their eyes, but with something deeper, something older. They were born not to follow the world, but to read it, shape it, and warn it. When others saw clouds, they saw omens. When others saw dreams, they saw messages. When others heard silence, they heard voices whispering from realms unseen. They were called many things: oracles, seers, diviners. But in every corner of Africa, they were known simply as the ones who see. To walk among them was to walk near fire, sacred, unpredictable, untamed. These were not prophets for kings alone. They were mediums for gods, interpreters of destiny, guardians of balance. In caves, forests, mountaintops, or earthen shrines, they sat with bones, shells, smoke, and shadow. And through trance, possession, or sacred math, they unveiled the truth that lay behind the world's mask. They did not guess. They knew. Across the continent, their forms were many. In the forests of the Yoruba, the Babalawo read the sacred signs of Ifa. In the hills of the Dagara, diviners spoke to the Contemple, the little people of the other world. In the valleys of the Zulu, the Isangoma fell into trance and summoned the spirits of ancestors to speak through their bodies. And deep in the heart of ancient Kemet, oracles sat beside sacred lakes, their eyes glazed in starlight, their lips moving in riddles not meant for the uninitiated. But these visionaries were not always honored. With the coming of conquest and conversion, many were silenced, feared, burned, branded as witches, branded as mad. Yet even then their eyes did not close, because true sight cannot be buried. It only waits. This is their story. From the roots of time to the flames of the Diaspora, from the whispers of deities to the cries of rebels, from bones that speak to dreams that guide. The full truth, with nothing skipped, no shadow ignored. Prepare yourself, for once you see through their eyes, the world will never look the same again. In the beginning, the gods did not hide behind clouds. They walked with men, sat among trees, whispered beside rivers, and danced in moonlight. But as the world became louder, crowded with cities, ambition, and noise, the gods retreated. Not out of anger, but necessity. Spirit cannot dwell in clutter. Divinity demands space, and so they chose mouthpieces. They selected certain ones, not for their strength or fame, but for their sensitivity, for their stillness, for their brokenness, for their openness. These were not warriors or kings. They were the ones who saw too much, heard what others could not bear, felt storms in their blood before the wind even stirred. These chosen ones were not taught. They were called. In fire, in dream, in lightning, in sudden illness that no doctor could cure, in madness that was not madness, in voices that came not from within, but from above, from below, from beyond. The first oracles were born with eyes that did not blink the way others did. Some spoke in riddles as children. Some wandered into forests and returned with messages from ancestors long dead. Some were struck down, only to rise again with breath not their own. And when they spoke, the village listened. Because what they said came true, because they knew things no mortal should. In the beginning, it was not called divination. It was simply the act of listening to the gods. Before there were systems, rituals, or tools, there was surrender. The gods would enter, fully, violently, beautifully, and the seer would become vessel. Their eyes would roll white. Their voice would change, and they would speak truths that scorched like fire and healed like rain. It was only later that structure emerged. In Kemet, ancient Egypt, temple priestesses known as sibyls sat beside sacred lakes, fasting, inhaling herbs, and entering trance. Pharaohs did not act without them. These women spoke in the voices of gods. What they said was law, and when they died, their names were sung for generations. In Nubia, seers read the winds and bones. In Nok, prophecy was hidden in carved stone. In If, the divine language of Ifa was born, an oral system so complex, so vast, it holds hundreds of thousands of verses memorized by trained diviners. It was said that Ifa was given by Orunmila, the god of wisdom, to men so that the gods might never be silent. The act of divining became more than a gift. It became a discipline. Diviners were trained in trance, in sacred mathematics, in star movement, in ancestral names. They did not simply predict, they diagnosed. They revealed the spiritual imbalance behind illness, the spiritual cause behind famine, the hidden hand behind war. And yet, with all their power, true seers lived humbly, because they knew they were not the source. They were the mirror, the echo, the mouth, and the gods. They did not just speak with words, they showed visions, sent dreams, made birds fly in strange patterns, made shadows move unnaturally, made children speak with ancient tongues. Every movement in the world, if read correctly, was a message. But to read it, one had to be clean, both in body and spirit. The seer did not eat just anything, did not sleep just anywhere, did not touch just anyone. They lived in between spirit and flesh, madness and meaning, life and something deeper. And in every tradition across Africa, you will find them. The Babalawo of the Yoruba, casting sacred Ikin nuts to read the divine Odu. The Isangoma of the Zulu, calling to the ancestors through bone and trance. The Azande witch-finders of Sudan, reading poison oracles through chickens. The sibyls of Ethiopia and Kush, veiled and fire-eyed, speaking in riddles. The Contemble mediums of Burkina Faso, who whisper with beings no outsider can see. Each culture shaped the practice differently, but the principle remained the same. The gods will always speak. Someone must be ready to listen. And so the line of seers began, generation after generation, not chosen by man, but by spirit. Even when colonizers came, even when churches burned shrines, even when seers were branded witches, hunted, exiled, the line never broke, because the gods never stopped speaking. Only now, fewer dared to listen. But they are still here, my lord, the seers. Some walk barefoot, some wear robes, some carry bones, some simply dream. And when they speak, the air shifts, because the gift that began in the beginning was never lost. The divine rarely shouts. It speaks in symbols, in patterns, in silence that must be read. And so the seers of Africa, called to listen beyond the veil, were given tools, sacred objects not of ornament, but of power. Objects that in the hands of the ordinary meant nothing, but in the hands of the chosen, they became portals. First among them, bones. Bones were more than remains. They were memory. Memory made hard. Memory that survived the fire of life. From the cattle fields of the Zulu to the dark huts of the Dinka, bones were cast like dice onto cloth-covered earth. Femur, knuckle, jawbone, tiny vertebrae of birds. Each one held a code. When thrown, their fall was never random. How they landed told a story. Who was angry? What had been stolen? Which spirit waited to be fed? The Isangoma would read them, not with the eyes alone, but with a spirit attuned to shadow. Then came the cowrie shells, smooth, white, ancient as breath, once used as currency, but among the Yoruba and across West Africa, They were never merely money. They were the eyes of the goddess. Some say they came from Yamoja herself. Others say they are the teeth of the ocean. But all agreed, when cast by a Babalawo or Ianifa, they spoke in patterns. 4 up, 2 down, 8 face down. The shell's turn revealed which Odu, sacred verses of Ifa, must be spoken. There are 256 Odu, each one a story, a warning, a cure. These shells did not lie. They did not flatter. They told the truth you were not ready for, and that is why their reading was sacred. You did not approach them casually. You fasted, you washed, you humbled yourself, because when the gods speak, you prepare to hear. But sometimes the message could not be cast. It had to be reflected. So came the mirrors, not the mirrors of vanity. These were black obsidian, polished with ash and oil. In Kemet, in Ethiopia, among the Bakongo and the Fon, seers used mirrors as gateways to the spirit world. The diviner would enter trance, gaze into the surface, and wait. Symbols would emerge, faces, beasts, flames, ancestors. Questions dissolved, and only vision remained. The mirror was not a tool, it was an eye, and there was fire. Yes, fire, the living tongue of spirit. In shrines, flames were kept burning for days. They danced when a spirit entered, flickered when a lie was told. In the Congo, some diviners read flames directly, watching their sway, their flicker, their smoke. In other places, fire was used to activate other tools, to burn herbs that open the sight, to blacken water, to crack palm nuts. The diviner's fire was not warmth. It was presence. It was the god stepping into the room. And the tools were more than tools. They were vessels. The shells were bathed in rainwater. The bones were fed with blood. The mirrors were kissed with breath. They were not dead objects. They were living things requiring care, offering revelation. Among the Dagara of Burkina Faso, diviners speak to the Contemplé, little spirit beings of the forest. The diviner draws patterns in ash and bone dust, drops sacred objects in the sand, and then the Contemplé speak, not through the tool, but through the pattern it makes. These readings are not interpreted, they are felt. In the north, the Azande of Sudan used the Benj oracle, a powerful ritual where poison was given to a chicken and a question asked aloud. If the chicken lived, the spirit had said no. If it died, the spirit had said yes. To the outsider, it was superstition, but to the Azande, it was sacred science, a way of communicating with spirits that did not lie. In Nigeria and Benin, diviners use the opal chain, a string of metal or seed pods, cast like the cowries to summon the Odu. The chain speaks with motion, with balance, with pause, and the trained hand can read the divine rhythm in its fall. These tools were not universal. They were specific to each culture, each lineage, each spirit. But what united them was this: none of them worked without initiation. A random man could throw bones and see nothing, but a true diviner, washed in ritual, trained by elders chosen by the spirits, could throw the same bones and see a nation's future. The tools were an extension of the seer's body. When they touched them, the line between matter and spirit blurred, and the gods did not merely observe. They entered, spoke, guided. So you see, these were not objects, they were keys to the world behind the world, to the realm where truth lives naked, to the space where the dead still speak and the gods still whisper. And even now, in back rooms and village courtyards, in city apartments and deep forests, these tools are waking again. The bones are rattling, the shells are turning, the mirrors are glowing. The fire is speaking. All they need is someone ready to listen. To see what others cannot is not always a blessing. Sometimes it is a curse. To carry the visions of gods, the grief of ancestors, the screams of unborn futures, this is no light thing, and those who bear the gift of sight often walk alone. The first price is isolation. In many villages, when a child is born with a mark, eyes too sharp, dreams too strange, visions too accurate, they are not always celebrated. They are feared. The other children avoid them. Their laughter feels different. Their presence unnerves. The elders whisper, "This one is not like the others," because deep down, everyone knows. Those who see too much cannot live like those who do not. So the seer learns to keep silent, to withhold, to sit by themselves at gatherings, to smile at the surface while drowning in visions, to pretend they didn't hear the voice that spoke in the fire, to pretend they didn't see the spirit behind the guest who entered. They are both honored and feared, invited when needed, forgotten when not. In some cultures, they are brought to the priestess or the elder for training, but in others, they are cast out, called mad, called cursed, called possessed. And so, many wander, nomads between spirit and society. The second price is madness, because the line between vision and reality is thin. Some lose themselves in it. They stop sleeping, they speak to the wind, they walk barefoot into storms. Not because they are insane, but because they've seen too much of what others refuse to see. Some go blind, not physically but spiritually overwhelmed. Some lose speech. Some collapse under the weight of messages they cannot deliver. Some try to run from the calling, but the spirits do not let them go easily. Illness follows, accidents, restlessness, until they return, until they surrender. Because the gods do not choose at random, and once chosen, you belong to the message. The third price is burden. A seer does not only read the future, they carry it. They feel the death before it comes. They sense betrayal before it strikes. They must tell a mother her son will not return. They must reveal that the crops will fail, that the king will fall, that the sickness is not curable, not because of medicine, but because of a curse long ignored. And they must do this even when it brings them danger, even when it costs them peace. Some seers have been exiled for telling the truth, some imprisoned, some killed, because the world does not always want truth. It wants comfort, and a true oracle gives neither lie nor sugar, only clarity. And so, many seers learn to walk the edge, to balance what they know with what they can say, to speak in riddles, to wait for the right moment, to protect themselves while protecting others. There are stories, too many, of seers who went silent, who buried their tools, who closed their eyes and refused to see, not because they lost their gift, but because the gift was too heavy. Yet, they always return, because the gods keep whispering, the ancestors keep knocking, the dreams do not stop, and eventually, the seer learns to carry it, to walk with it, to let the madness become music, to let the isolation become communion, to let the burden become honor. And when that happens, the seer becomes more than vessel. They become bridge. They stand not just between spirit and flesh, but between generations, between history and healing, between what was, what is, and what may be. This is the cost of sight. And still, they say yes, again and again, not for power, not for praise, but because they were born for it, because someone must see. They came in chains, torn from the earth that fed them, the rivers that named them, the gods that whispered in their ears. They were beaten, sold, broken, but they were not blind. Even in the hold of the slave ships, even in the shadows of sugar plantations, even beneath the whip in the Bible, they still saw. Because prophecy cannot be shackled, and the spirit never forgets its language. The oracles, the seers, the diviners of Africa did not vanish in the Middle Passage. They transformed, hidden in song, buried in herb, cloaked in dream. They survived in the old women who whispered over the fire, in the child who spoke to invisible friends, in the healer who knew just which root would draw the fever out, in the mother who dreamed of blood before rebellion came, in the man who said, "Don't go there tomorrow," and saved a village. They were everywhere, and they were watching. In Haiti, they became the Mambos and Hungans, keepers of voodoo, dreamers who spoke to the Loa, interpreters of spirit who danced and trembled in ceremony, revealing what was hidden. They called the spirits into their bodies, gave them voice, gave the people guidance. In Cuba, they became santeros and santeras, carrying Ifa in secret, reading the cowries behind closed doors, interpreting dreams by candlelight. The Babalawo remained, though the chains of colonization tried to sever the line. In Brazil, they wore white. The women of Candomblé, called the Ayalorixas, kept the names of the Orisha alive. Their hands stirred pots with sacred herbs, but they also stirred futures. They cast the opal, sang the old chants, carried messages from Ogun, Osun, Obaluaye. Even under Catholic statues, they saw the truth, and they taught their children to see. Even in the U.S. South, where slavery bit deep, the Seers survived as root workers, conjure women, granny healers. They hid their tools in plain sight. The Bible lay open on the table, but beneath it, bones and cards whispered what Scripture could not say. They spoke of death before it arrived. They foresaw war. They warned of betrayal. They planted coins at crossroads. They knew when to pray, when to cut, when to weep. The white world called them witches, but the people called them wise. And in every whispered consultation, in every smoke-filled reading, in every candlelit vigil, the message was clear. The line is unbroken. The ancestors still walk. The spirits still speak. The gift still lives. Even when the church said it was evil. Even when the law said it was illegal. Even when the children were taught to forget, they remembered. Because sight is not a book you can burn. It is a fire in the blood. They passed it on in lullabies, in recipes, in the way they stared too long at a person and then shook their heads, in the warnings they gave with no explanation, in the dreams that arrived too loud to ignore. The Diaspora did not just carry bodies, it carried seers, and those seers carried Africa in their eyes. So when you see a woman dressed in white, rocking gently as she chants in a tongue that predates empires, know she is a bridge. When you meet a man who reads your soul in silence, know he comes from a line unbroken by oceans. When you feel something watching, warning, whispering through the smoke, know it is the gift, still alive. The prophets never died. They just changed clothes. No one wakes up one morning and simply decides to become a seer. The gift does not come because you want it. It comes because the spirits want you, and when they choose you, they do not ask. They claim. It may begin as a dream, a name repeated by ancestors you've never met, a fever that won't break, a shadow in the mirror, a sudden fear of death followed by a peace too deep to explain, or worse, an accident, a madness, a season of complete collapse. Because to gain the sight, something in you must first die. In African traditions, the call to become a seer is not glamour. It is grief. It is disorientation. It is a stripping away. The Yoruba say the gods first break you before they fill you. Among the Dagara, they say the Contomble steal your voice until you agree to use it for truth. Among the Zulu, the ancestors will torment you with visions until you surrender and begin the journey to become an Isangoma. The first step is always the same: surrender. Once chosen, you must be brought to a master, an elder, a priest, a diviner with lineage and power. They take you under their wing, not as a student, but as a soul to be reborn. Because initiation is not school, it is death and resurrection. You are taken from the world, hidden, prepared. Your head is shaved, your body cleansed. You wear white, red, or black, depending on the path. You eat differently, sleep differently.
You are no longer your old name. You become a vessel in the making. And then come the rituals. You are bathed in sacred waters, fed by hand. You are taught to pray, not just with words, but with bones, with smoke, with silence. You are taught the sacred names, the rhythms of possession, the symbols only spirits recognize. You are shown how to enter trance, how to open and close the door between worlds. And above all, you are taught humility. Because to be a seer is not to be a master. It is to be a servant. The gods will speak through you, but they are not yours. The visions will come, but they are not for your fame. You are a mirror, and mirrors must stay clean. Initiation may take weeks, months, sometimes years. Some must go into the forest. Some must live in silence. Some must be buried up to the neck in earth. Some must fast until the ancestors give them a name. And when the spirits say, "Now you are ready," only then can you speak for them. And yet, the journey does not end there, because to be a seer is not just to see, it is to carry a legacy. Every diviner belongs to a lineage, a spiritual family that stretches backward through generations. When you are initiated, you do not walk alone, you walk with those who came before. You are given the tools, bones, shells, mirrors, not just to use, but to protect. You inherit stories, rituals, taboos. Your life is no longer yours. It belongs to the path. And in time you will train others. You will pass the name. You will prepare the next vessel. Because this gift is not yours to hoard. It is a torch passed hand to hand through ancestral fire. Even today, in modern cities, this process lives on. In Lagos, in Durban, in Port-au-Prince, in Bahia, in Atlanta. The old ways are returning. The youth are dreaming again. They are hearing the call. And the elders, though fewer, still wait to guide them. Because the gods never stopped calling. And the line has not broken. It only waits for the next one to say yes. There are times in history when silence cannot explain what comes to pass. When a people rise with no warning. When an empire crumbles under the weight of a whisper. When a king kneels before a woman with eyes turned white. These are not myths, my lord. These are moments when the seers spoke, and the world bent. In ancient Kemet, before Pharaoh took the throne, he consulted the temple oracles. Not advisors, not priests, but women, sibyls, who fasted by sacred lakes and saw visions in water. It was said they predicted invasions, floods, even the betrayal of brothers. And when the Nile would rise, it was not the court astrologers who knew, but the seers in linen, hands wet with sacred ink, eyes gazing beyond time. In West Africa, among the Yoruba, the Ifa system preserved prophecies that span centuries. The Babalawo did not only divine individual destinies, they cast for entire nations. Before the fall of Oyo, before the rise of Dahomey, the Odu verses had already warned, where pride rises like fire without restraint, water will come to drown the kingdom. And drown it did. In the Ashanti Empire, a woman named Ya Asantewa led her people to war in 1900. But few know that before she picked up the gun, she visited the shrine. The oracle there told her, "The soul of the king rests in your hands. The throne will not survive without your fire." She took those words as command, and though the empire faced British steel, her fire birthed legends that still burn. In southern Africa, among the Xhosa, came the prophecy of Nonkawuse, a teenage girl in the 1850s who claimed to hear voices of the ancestors by the river. She prophesied that if the people slaughtered their cattle and destroyed their grain, the ancestors would rise, the British would be driven into the sea, and a new world would begin. Thousands obeyed. They waited. The sky did not split. And the result? Famine, death, a broken people. Yet her vision still haunts the land, not as madness, but as warning. Because the prophecy may not have failed. It may have simply been misread. The ancestors did rise, but not in the way they expected. Because that is the truth about seers. They speak in symbols. And if the people are not ready to listen with spirit, not just ears, they will miss the message entirely. In Senegal, the Seer diviners foretold the French colonial invasions decades before they came. They told the elders to dig trenches, to prepare the youth, to hide the sacred drums. And those who listened survived. Those who laughed perished.
In Ethiopia, the Dateres, wandering mystics and diviners, traveled from village to village with scrolls, prayers, and holy words. They read signs in the stars and bones. One such Datere, it is said, warned of the coming of Mussolini's armies. He told a village elder, "Iron birds will fall from the sky, and fire will walk on two legs." They did not understand until the bombs came. Even in the Diaspora, the prophets never ceased. In Haiti, Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, was not just a healer. She was a seer. She warned powerful men of their downfall. She told women when to stay, when to flee. It said she once looked into a woman's eyes and said, "Your son will grow to defy kings, but not without blood." Years later, that boy would lead a strike that crippled the city's elite. And what of today? Yes, even now, seers rise. There was the woman in Ghana who dreamt of a flood weeks before the dam broke. The elder in Nigeria who saw fire falling on markets just days before a refinery exploded. The child in South Africa who spoke in tongues no one taught her, until an old diviner recognized it as an ancient prayer from Mozambique. These are not fairy tales. These are footprints of prophecy, sometimes fulfilled, sometimes misunderstood, but always real, because Africa has never lacked prophets, only listeners. And now, the world is changing again. The drums are beating, the winds are turning, the gods are stirring, the seers are speaking. Will we hear them?
The world is loud now. Screens flicker, cities throb, machines hum, people scroll and forget. And yet, beneath it all, something ancient is stirring. The seer is returning, not with fire in the sky, not with fanfare or fame, but in quiet moments, in strange dreams, in whispers carried on the wind. It starts with a feeling. You know someone will call before they do. You see danger in a place that looks harmless. You dream of water, and someone you love drowns in memory. You touch a hand, and know its grief. These are not coincidences. These are the threads of vision returning. The ancestors are speaking again, not in temples, but through the bloodline. In every continent, the gift is rising. The youth are seeing beyond logic. They feel something is wrong with the world but can't name it. Some call it anxiety. Some call it sensitivity. But it is more. It is the old sight reawakening. In Nigeria, young babalawos now post sacred verses on phones. In Ghana, diviners stream rituals live. In Jamaica, women dream of the old goddesses, though they've never heard their names. In Brazil, in America, in Europe, the children of the diaspora are dreaming again. Bones are being cast in bedroom, cowries laid out beside laptops, ancestors called in apartments above the noise. This is not a return to the past. This is a rebirth of the present. The gift was never just for the forest. It belongs in the city. It belongs in this moment. Because the gods did not die, they adapted. The seers did not disappear, they went underground. And now, the underground is rising. There are signs. A woman walks into a room and the air changes. A boy draws symbols he's never learned. A voice tells you, turn left, and you avoid tragedy. A stranger gives you a message that feels like prophecy. This is not madness, it is the gift. It is the call, and many are hearing it. They ask, how do I begin? How do I know if I'm chosen? You already know. You feel it. The dreams, the unrest, the pull. You begin by remembering, by listening, by honoring the signs, by sitting in silence and saying, if the gift is mine, I am ready. Because readiness is the gate, and surrender is the key. And once the spirits know you are ready, the journey begins. You will be tested, you will be shaped, you will be trained, not by YouTube videos or hashtags, but by the spirits themselves. They will lead you to teachers, to books, to elders, to visions, to rituals. Piece by piece, they will rebuild the map. The return of the seer is not just about individuals. It is about the collective. The world is out of balance. The earth groans. The sky tightens. We need the sight again, not to predict lottery numbers, but to restore alignment. We need the healers who see, the listeners who don't flinch, the dreamers who don't doubt, the prophets who speak even when their voice shakes. This is not fantasy. This is the oldest truth. The oracles are among us. The bones are calling. The mirrors are clearing. The flames are speaking. And now the only question left is, will you answer the call?